10.6, solving equations by factoring. This is what we've been working towards. This is the crescendo of our unit here. Amazing. Yes? Okay. We don't need to read the zero product property on page 490, word 1. I'll actually summarize that for you, just because I don't want to have to dig out the textbooks, but copy down the word or the title zero product property and be ready to define that there. All right, zero product property. Zero product property says if you multiply A times B and get 0, it means that one of these two things has to be what? 0. Yeah, one has to be 0. The only way to multiply and make 0 is to multiply by 0. There's no other way to multiply two things together and get a 0 unless you're multiplying by 0, right? We could add and subtract to make it, but we can't multiply. So the zero product property says, hey, if I have things that it could be 3 or 4 things, but if I'm multiplying to equal 0, one of the things I multiply by has to be 0. So either A has to be 0 or B has to be 0. One of those has to be true. Okay? Something has to be 0. Yeah. They could both be 0, sure. But generally, if that's the case, you might maybe see A times A or B times B. But yeah, they could both be 0. Yeah, so I guess we could have and or. Because 0 times 0 is 0 as well. Yeah. Pretty cool, huh? I thought so. All right. Well, we're going to try a problem off our assignment. Okay, so you could be adding these to your notes and work these in your notes. But I want you to go ahead and solve for x in number 1. Do what you think you should there. Okay, work with your groupies. You get about, I don't know, we'll go a minute or 2 on it. Okay, ready, go. I saw a few people had it, but I'm going to give you a hint. Okay? How many things are you multiplying together there? I see a few 2s, a few 4s. Okay. Let's say I have this and this. What's in between here? Yeah, multiplication symbol. So do we know what this, how much this is? This is a quantity, right? Now some of you go, well, it's x plus 1, but we really don't know what x is, so we don't know what's actually in here. Right? It's like an unopened box. So we're multiplying this by this. So how many things are we multiplying together? Only 2. Okay? If we know that this times this equals 0, what do you know about this or this? Work together on it. Okay? Wrap up discussion. Anyone have an idea? TT? TT says x has to be -1 or -3. Can you tell me why x would have to be -1?
Because if you do -1 plus 1 equals 0, then anything times 0 is 0.
Okay, so you're trying to make one of these pieces 0. So you can make, we know what's in here. This is x plus 1 in here. And we know if we're multiplying two things together, one of them has to be 0. So TT's making this part equal 0. She's saying, well, if x plus 1 equals 0, that means x would actually have to be -1, because -1 plus 1 makes 0. Everyone agree? Yeah, so good. Yeah, x could be -1. That would make this quantity 0. Would it make this one 0 if x was -1? No, we'd have -1 times 2. Or, excuse me, we'd have 0 times 2. Is that still 0? Yeah. Okay. What would make this one 0? Yeah? -3. Okay, and that's the other one that TT gave us there. X plus 3 equals 0. Well, we subtract 3 on both sides, so x would have to be -3. That would make this one 0. Would it make this 0 if this was -3? No, it would be 0 times -3 plus 1, or -2. But do we still get 0 when we multiply? Yeah. So x, the solutions for x are -1 and -3. Okay? Yeah.
number 2 is like kind of the same thing. All of them are. Would you just do the opposite? Like, because it says it's A, 4 and A plus 8. Would that mean it would be like, the answer would be negative?
Okay, so Caden's asking on number 2, so everyone take a look at number 2. So what do you think the answers are there, Caden?
Negative 4 and
Is Caden right? Jaden, is Caden right? Hey, that right? You think so? Does negative 4 make this 0?
Yeah.
Does negative 8 make this 0? Do you just do the opposites? Yeah, if there's nothing in front of A, right? Yeah, just do the opposite. So here, A equals negative 4 and negative 8. And actually, we could write that like that. That's called set notation. That's generally how we write it. A is equal to the set, negative 4 and negative 8. Okay. Yep. Good. All right. Did you give yourself time to work through the first, I don't know, 10 problems there? First 10. Go for it. I'll be walking around. If you need help, make sure you ask when I'm going around there. Try those first 10 out. Well, I gave you a bunch of time and you guys flew through that. So, how many made it to 10? All right, so we get to 10, it looks a little different, right? So now we have that A term. So tell your neighbor how you went ahead and solved that one. What did you do there? Okay, volunteer, what did you do? Caden?
would you have to divide through 2 by 3?
Okay, so you still have 2n plus 3. This part has to equal 0. And so, did you subtract 3 first? Okay. Okay. So we take the opposite, right? We're still setting this equal to 0. We still say, well, 2n equals negative 3. Everyone with me there? So we do that, and then to get rid of the 2, we do what Caden said. You divide by 2, but you got to subtract the 3 first. So minus 3 divided by 2 is negative 3 halves. Some of you might write that because it terminates as negative 1.5, but you only could go to decimal form if it terminates. That means it doesn't keep going on. Okay? So either answer there would work, that one or the negative 1.5. What's in? Over here. Yeah. Yeah, it's 4. So the danger with doing it, just saying, yeah, it's just the opposite. Well, that's true as long as there's not an A term. If there's an A term, it's the opposite, and then you got to divide by A. So the opposite here is negative 3, and then I got to divide by 2. Okay? How many got it? Any questions? Okay, so I want you to continue working down the front of that page, please. Go ahead and finish through 18. Okay? And by the way, I saw that a lot of you are writing it in set notation, so that's very good. Okay, get those sets, those brackets there. There we go. All right, so now a quick shortcut for some of you who are sitting there racking your minds on doing these and throwing them into your calculator and stuff. Look, there are 2 steps. Like if we're doing number 13, there are 2 steps if you're trying to make 3x minus 7 equals 0. So for those of you that pay attention, you'll save yourself some time here. Oops, except for I didn't mean to write that. 3x minus 7 equals 0. What are the 2 steps to solving that? Tell your neighbor quickly. 2 steps. Okay, what's the first step? Yep. Add 7. Second step? Yeah. Divide by 3. That's your answer. Okay? What are the 2 steps to solving this one? Jake, what's the first step? 2x plus 1 equals 0. What do you got to move first? Get x by itself. What's the first thing you got to do? Not divide by 2. Nope. Subtract 1. Okay, first one is subtract 1. And then, Jake? Then divide by 2, because we now have 2x equals negative 1. Now we divide by 2. Okay, negative 1/2. Okay, so 2 steps. Subtract 1, divide by 2. That's an answer. Okay, so it should be that quick. You're looking at these problems going, hey, there are 2 steps involved here. First step is to? Everyone, first step? If we're making that equal 0, first step is to add 3 and then divide by a. That's one answer. We're making this equal 0. First step is to subtract 1 and divide by 4. That's your other answer. Okay? So 2 steps. Now, guys, if it isn't that quick for you and you have to write them out, make sure you write them out like this, but you still have to go through the steps. Okay? It's just a 2-step equation. This is way back at the first, second week of school. 2-step equations. Okay? All right. So make sure you're asking if you're stuck right here. Okay? If you're stuck on these and you can't quite do them in your head like that, that's okay. Write them out first. All right? Go about another minute or so, and then we're going to move on to the back page there. Okay. Hey, here we go. Next part. Go ahead and turn the page over. We are on number 19 now. Number 19. Solve each by factoring. So you'll notice on the previous page, everything was already in factored form. So like when we left off at 18, we had our quantities. It's in factored form. 19 isn't factored. Therefore, you're not multiplying things together to make 0. You're adding things together to make 0. And remember, when you're adding to make 0, like you can add an infinite number of things together to make 0. -1 and +1. -2 and +2. -3 and +3. -9 and +9. Right? You can add an infinite number of things. So it's tough when you're adding to make 0. Your goal is to multiply. And so if you're going to multiply to make 0, we should factor this first. Okay, so if it's not factored, you got to factor. Previous page, everything was factored. These aren't. So go ahead and factor number 19. Hopefully it won't take you too long to factor that. Give it a go. Okay, let's see how we did. A times C gives us 6. 2 things to multiply to make 6 and add to 5. Yep. 2 and 3. Be careful not to use 5 and 1. Or 6 and 1. X plus 2, x plus 3. That all equals 0. Those are the 2 things that multiply to make 6. We don't have to divide by a because a is 1. This gives me a solution of -2, and this gives me a solution of -3. There we go. Once we have it in factored form, finding the solutions are pretty easy. But you got to factor first. Yeah. Usually, you know what? That's a good question. We usually go numeric order, and so I didn't do that there. It's not wrong if you don't, but a lot of times you see it in numerical order. So from least to greatest. Okay. Questions there? Because I do want your answers in fraction form. Okay. So if on the other side you went decimal, this side go fraction on all of them. Okay, this is fraction form, right? -3, -3/1, same thing. Okay, but if you have a fraction like 5/8, leave it as 5/8 unless it terminates, which in that case 5/8 does. Okay, but if you have like 2/3, that doesn't. So you got to leave it as a fraction. Okay?
So if we had decimals on this side, just leave it.
Yeah, you could leave it, but then on this side you need to use fractions. Okay? All right, number 20. Give it a go. So 2 things that multiply to make -18 because we don't, a is 1, we go a times c, we just get -18. And add to -7. I saw a lot of you, you're doing this very quick, but b plus and b minus because the c is negative. 2 things. What are they? Yeah? -9, +2. So there we go. Okay? And then we do our opposites. What makes this part 0? Yeah? -2. And what makes this part 0? 9. Okay? Our solutions are x equal, or I guess in this case it's b equals -2 and +9. All right. How many got it? Neato burrito, man. So once you get factored, you got that one last step. So we're just adding one step to our factoring. Okay. Number 21. Tell your neighbor what it factors to. Toki, you're my neighbor. What do you got?
-2 and +2.
-2 and +2. Toki's using -2 and +2. Anyone else using that? Difference of two perfect squares, right? Remember, perfect square, it's a binomial. If you're not using that pattern, then you have to put that +0r in there. So you're finding two things that multiply to make -4 and add to 0. And if they add to 0, they've got to be opposite, so positive and -2. That means this answer is 2, and this answer is -2. And we have a special way we could write that. We could write it as r equals ±2. You know, that way we don't have to write the number 2 twice. That's painstaking. We don't want to go through all that hard work. Okay, here we go. ±2. Just for you. All right. Questions? Guys, to work through number 27, or actually try to get through 28 if you can right now. 28. Keep on cranking through. So put that up there through 28. You guys have yours, but hey, a lot of you are getting to problem 25, and that's where it kind of changes tone just a bit. So look at 25. I've talked to a few of you about it. Okay, on 25, notice it's not equal to 0, right? So you want to make it equal to 0. Annalise? Yeah, it just means c is -8. It means you have to bring this 8 over. So if we subtract 8 and move this over to this side, that would now give us x squared. We can't put the 8 with anything, so it just gets tacked onto the end. That means c is -8. All equals 8 minus 8, or 0. So we get to there. It'll focus in. And we got it. Okay, and now we factor that. Two things that multiply to make -8 and add to 7. Okay, so once you get it set equal to 0, if it's not equal to 0, move it over and set it equal to 0. Okay, very good. Now when Mackenzie did this, she did a cooler way than I did. So like if I'm moving 25 over, she would subtract over, she'd just put the minus sign there. She'd make that big minus say equals 0. It's pretty crafty if you ask me. Nice work, Mackenzie. I'm impressed. Okay, and like here, Mackenzie, how would you do that one? Because that one's a little tougher. What would you do? I mean, because you got to add 21 over. So. Just make that plus? Yeah. Would you just like scribble this out or something? Yeah. And then say equals 0? Yeah. Good thinking. Yeah. Nice. All right. That's what you could do. You're setting them equal to 0 though. Okay, once you get them set equal to 0, then it's just factoring and solving. So that's the last step in it today. Okay, and then when you get to 28, we get some a terms in there. All right? Okay, so go ahead and keep cranking through them. We'll go through 28 here in a minute or two together, but give that one a go. All right, number 28.
Very good, very good. You're wrong.
28. Everyone take a look at 28, please. Done talking. Eyes and ears focused up here. Gentlemen, here we go. Number 28. What has to happen first? Yeah. A by C. There's always one thing we should try before we do that. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about it, but yeah. Yeah, let's try to reduce it. What comes out of each of these terms? 2. So it's not, we're really factoring out a 2, so we're pulling out that 2 first. Right? So 2 times what is 2t squared? Dude. Okay, you guys fill it out. What goes in there? Okay, 2 times what makes that? 2 times what makes that? 2 times what makes that? Go ahead and fill it out. All right, what did we get here? TT? T squared, okay. What goes here? Kayla? Or Kyla? Sorry. I know. 4t. Good job. And what goes here? Mackenzie? -32. Okay. And so from here, do we have to worry about that 2 really? We don't have to because there's no variable there. All right? We know 2 is going to be 2 is going to be 2. It's never going to change. It's always going to be 2. Okay? So what we do is we just kind of ignore that it's there as we're trying to solve this. Kinsey, you got to take that out right now. Okay? And then two things that multiply to make negative 32 and add to 4. Well, first, are our signs plus, minus, plus, plus, or minus, minus? Signs the same or opposite? They're opposites because C is negative. Okay? And we know the front is T for sure. Nothing's even going to go in front of that because T has nothing in front of it. Factors of 32. Well, 1 times 32, do those differ by 4? No, what's half of 32? 16. 2 and 16, do those differ by 4? No. Okay. Well, 3. Does 3 go into 32? Goes into 33. It won't go into 32. How about 4? 4 and 8. So if you're leaving, it's a good idea to just leave yourself a trail if you struggle with these. 1, 32, 2 and 16, 4 and 8. Hey, those differ by 4. How much do they, which one needs to be our positive? Which one needs to be negative? Yeah?
8 needs to be positive and 4 is negative.
Okay, 8 is positive, 4 is negative. Everyone tell their neighbor why it has to be that way. Why can't it be 8 is negative and 4 is positive? Okay, why must it be like that? Yeah. Because the 8 up here is positive, yeah. Okay, so we have to differ, or excuse me, the 4 here is positive, excuse me. We have to differ by 4, and we have to have positive 4. Okay, so there has to be more positives than negatives. So here we have 4 more positives. So we have 2 times this times this. One of these 3 things has to be 0. Can we ever make 2 a 0? We can't make 2 become 0. Okay, can we make t plus 8 become 0? Yeah, what does t have to be? Negative 8. Can we make t minus 4 equal 0? Yep, what does t have to be? 4. Okay, so our solutions are t equals negative 8 and positive 4. There we go. Those are our zeros there. We call those our zeros. All right, also called x-intercepts. We'll get to that later. But they also, this is where our graph of this would cross the x-axis. There are zeros, there are x-intercepts. They're called our roots. Yeah?
We've got 2 up there. We
Just leave it there. It's just hanging out. It's like, oh, man. Yeah, it's bumming. Sorry. That's it. All right. Your assignment is to finish the page. Okay, now you have some tougher ones at the bottom here. You're going to have to do A times C. You're going to have to do some different type of factoring. I'd like to go through, I'd like to try number 34 together before we're done here. So actually, why don't we jump to 34 right now? You guys give that one a go. 34. Get as far as you can on it. Guys, on 34, you guys, hey, make sure you write down your steps if you don't have them, guys. I mean, things that you can follow through here. Is it set equal to 0? No. Number 1, set it equal to 0. Okay, set equal to 0. Number 2. So 2n squared minus 5n. How do we set it equal to 0? Yeah? Either one. Subtract 12. That equals 0. Okay? So you got to move that 12 over. Okay? Number 2. After you set it equal to 0, try to pull out a greatest common factor. So these are the things that we've done today and throughout this chapter. And that's not always possible. Okay, so that's if possible, pull out a greatest common factor. Okay? So, if it's possible, pull out that greatest common factor, and in this case, is there anything that goes in 2, 5, and 12 equally? No, we don't just automatically divide by 2. We can't do it because it doesn't go into 5. Okay? So here it's not possible. Number 3, what do? Can't pull anything out, we factor. Okay? We go into factoring. Okay? A times C. A times C is Negative 24. Two things to multiply to make negative 24. Okay, and so since it's negative, since C is negative, we've got our parentheses. Are the signs the same or different? Everyone? Different. Okay? All that equals 0. Two things to multiply to make negative 24 and add to negative 5. TT? Negative 8 and positive 3. Okay, so negative 8, positive 3. Okay, we put n out in front. Okay, remember, we had to go a times c here. We begin by multiplying by a. What do we end by doing? Yeah. Divide by a. So when we divide by a, we get 2, and we get 2. You guys with me there? Okay, here's a shortcut in this one. Whereas in factoring, we would get to this point, and what would be the next thing we'd have to do here? Okay, someone besides Annalise, what's the next thing we'd have to do? Cool? We'd have to move the 2 over. It'd become 2n plus 3. And here we'd reduce. We get n minus 4. Well, it's good to reduce because this answer is actually what? Yeah, 4. What's this answer? Yeah? Negative 3 over 2. Notice it's really close to this answer. In fact, it's just the opposite of this one. So if you get to here, I would just, like if you're solving, I would just stop and go, I wouldn't even write it like this unless they tell you to factor all the way first. And you just go to there. I mean, it's just the opposite. It's what makes this 0. Well, the opposite of that makes it 0. How many see what I'm talking about there? Where you just do the opposite. If not, then go ahead and factor and then solve. Okay? You guys, so here are your steps that we've went through. Okay, this is the last thing here. Number 4 is solve. Okay? Hopefully you have something that you could put next to each of those steps. We kind of did a lot of it in this problem. We had to set it equal to 0. So this would be a good example to have. We had to pull out a greatest common factor, or try to pull out a greatest common factor. It doesn't work. We had to factor. And then the last part was solve. Yeah? What's that? Yeah, I want to talk to the 8th graders real quick. Okay, finish the page. That's your assignment. If you're struggling, I expect to see you here before class tomorrow. Okay, or at lunch.